Okay. Who would like to do the invocation prayers today?
You want me to do, Prabhuji? Hare Krishna.
Of course, Prabhu. Please do.
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Himate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani
Namo
Namaste Saraswati
Saraswati Devi
Gauravani Nirvishesha Punyavadi Asachata Shri Krishna Jai Prabhu Nityananda Giri Advaita Gada Nirvasiva Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Ram
Hare Hare. Vanchat kalpatarupasya kripa sindhubhe patitanam paune boy Vaishnav
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.
Aad ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, any questions from last week by any chance? Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, we have read here there are 4 genuine or bona fide sampradaya, and we belong to Brahma, Madhva, Gauriya, Vaishnava. Could you please explain who are the followers of the other 3 ones?
Okay.
With little examples, like what we see in the society.
Well, okay. So, the other most famous one is Sri Sampradaya. That's headed by Mother Lakshmi. And the most famous Acharya in Sri Sampradaya is Ramanujacharya. I'm sure everyone has heard the name Ramanujacharya.
Yeah.
Then we have what we call Rudra Sampradaya. That's headed by Lord Shiva, actually. And the most famous Acharya, if I'm not mistaken, and sometimes get mixed up, is Nimbarka Acharya.
I think Prabhu Vishnu Swami.
Is it Vishnu Swami? Okay, Prabhu, I get mixed up. So Vishnu Swami. And then the final one is Kumar Sampradaya, and that must be Nimbarka Acharya then.
Limbaka, yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I get mixed up sometimes. So Prabhuji,
Who is like today's these followers? Who are these followers of these sampradayas in today's society? If we see.
so I'm not sure I understand the question. Like when you say who is it?
Like if we look in our society, like we see ISKCON now. ISKCON is from Brahma, Madhva, Gauriya, Vaishnava. And similarly, if you can give some example, like who are the followers of Rudra Sampradaya or Lakshmi Sampradaya or Shri, which is Shri Sampradaya, and the Kumar Sampradaya. Who are the, like, if we see in our society, where we will see these followers?
Yeah, Prabhu,
Those Naga sadhus are belong to? No.
Radhavnath, by any chance know where to find somebody like that?
Yeah, yes. That's
No,
what I mean.
not definitely not Naga. As you say, Prabhu, the Sri Sampradaya, and we have a lot of followers. In ISKCON, Raman Prabhu is there. You know, Prabhu, he knows or not. There are many devotees in Toronto.
Yeah.
I think Raman Prabhu's guru, he visited. I had been there 10 years back. So they are prominent in South India. But as far as other Sampradaya, at least I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really hear a lot about them. And to be honest with you, I've not expressed much interest in that either. So I haven't really.
Okay, Prabhuji. Okay, Prabhuji. That's fine.
They're called Shaivites, right, Prabhu? Those are followers
No,
of...
not Shaivites, no, they're Vaishnavas.
Three Sampradaya Vaishnavas.
4 Sampradayas are Vaishnava Sampradayas.
Okay.
So Prabhu, one that I know, there is in Gujarat, there is Pushti Marg, which are followers of Vallabhacharya, which is a branch of Rudra Sampradaya.
Oh, is it?
So,
Okay, all right. Yeah.
so I spoke to few of them, and then they are Rudra Sampradaya, like they follow Vallabhacharya. So like Pushti Marg is prominent, which I heard.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. I'm familiar with them as well, but I did not know that they are Rudra Sampraday. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, I have a question for all of you.
Sorry, Prabhu. I had a question. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Prabhu, can you repeat the part of what the other Prabhu said? I didn't heard it, like about the Pushti Margis.
Pushti Marg. Pushti Marg is the followers of Vallabhacharya who actually believe in Laddu Gopal.
Yeah.
Pushti basically means nourishment, taken care of. And he's saying that they come from Rudra Sampradaya.
I'm Pushti Margi, actually.
Okay, then you tell me. Yeah.
Pushti Margi, and our roots comes from Shri Sampradaya. It's a branch that links to Shri Sampradaya.
Okay, all right. So like I said, Prabhu, I don't know these other Sampradayas. I mean, I'm having difficulty enough to understand my own. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
Good answer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best answer.
Thank you, Prabhu. So my question is for all of you. So God Purnima is coming. In Toronto, at least, it's on the 28th. And next Thursday would be 25th. So the question I have for you is, would you like me to continue with Bhagavatam, or would you like me to do the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya on that day?
Pastimes of Lord Chaitanya.
Chaitanya Prabhu.
Loud enough?
Yes, Prabhu.
Pastimes.
Chaitanya, the pastime.
Okay, all right. Well, we have to go with that now. Yes. Yes.
Prabhuji approved.
Approved. Yes, Prabhu, highest authority.
Bachchan
Approved.
stamp.
Thank you, beta. Okay, all right. So let's do that. And okay, so we can start with tonight's class. If there are no other questions. So those of you who have good memory probably recall in chapter 4. Chapter 4. Last week we talked about the story of Prachetas. And you may also recall that they performed austerities for a long time, I think 10,000 years or something like that, underwater. And finally they got the blessings and darshan of Lord Vishnu. And when they came out, they found that the entire earth had been covered by the trees. There was nothing left for anything else. So that made them very angry, and they started to burn the trees. So now we're going to continue from that point. So I think you also mentioned last week that not last week, week before, that the moon god came, the Chandra came and requested the Prachetas to stop this burning of the trees, and to pacify them, he offered them a very beautiful girl, and I'm trying to remember her name. She was the daughter of an Apsara, and her name was okay, sorry, it's not coming to me. Anyway, so they married her, and they had a son whose name was Daksha. Not that same Daksha that had insulted Lord Shiva. This is a different Daksha. And he was given the responsibility for increasing the population. So he tried his best. He created demigods, he created demons, he created human beings. But he felt that his efficacy in doing this work was worse than AstraZeneca's, which is 62%. And he said, not good enough, I have to do something. So he took sannyas and performed severe austerities and offered. Sorry, someone trying to say something, or just mute everyone. Okay. Yeah. So he performed what became famous as Hans Guhya prayers. And pleased the Lord with that. But, Lord being the super soul, Sarvasya Chaham Hridhi Sannivishto, he knew that really in his heart, Daksha simply wants to have sense enjoyment. So, which is kind of silly because you see in the Lord, but you still have the sense desires, sense gratification desires. So Lord said, okay, fine, So he gave him the potency to enjoy, unlimitedly, and he offered him a girl who kind of matched his appetite. Her name was Ashikni, yes. So with her, he had 10,000 sons. Now, it doesn't say whether it took 10,000 years to do that, but anyway, 10,000 sons. And he ordered them to increase the population. So they said, okay, we'll go to a lake, just like the Pachetas had done, and we'll perform austerities there, and we'll meditate, and then when we're qualified, we'll come back and have children. So they were doing that in a place called Narayan Sar, which is a lake. And Narad Muni noticed that. And he said, these 10,000 kids, they're engaged in austerities, but austerities for simple creation of babies. And there's a very famous verse which says, excuse me, Antar Bahar Yadi Hari, Antar Bahar Yadi Na Hari Kim Tapa. Antar Bahar Yadi Hari Kim Tapa, which says, if you have the Lord in your heart, what's the use of any austerities? And if you're not thinking about the Lord, what's the use of austerities? So on that philosophy, he went and basically preached to them what the ultimate goal of life is. And he advised them to not become ordinary karmis and have children and all that. So they accepted the advice. They became Narad Muni's disciples and never returned to their father, who just simply waited. Well, then he heard about this and he was very sad that this happened. So he got another 1,000 sons and ordered them to have children. Well, they also engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu before they started. But Narada Muni showed up and he convinced them also to not worry about or not bother with all this and become a devotee. So they also became mendicants, devotees, and never went back to their father. So twice Daksha was foiled in his attempts to increase the world's population. And he got very angry and he actually cursed Narad Muni and he said, you will never be able to stay anywhere. In other words, you'll have no residence. And Narad Muni said, that's great, thank you. I was waiting for those blessings. Completely confusing Daksha, but anyway, Narad Muni was happy. Daksha also had 60 daughters and he gave them, in marriage to various personalities. And because they were women, Narad Muni did not bother to convince them to have a renounced order of life, which makes sense. So these 60 girls marrying all these people, they filled the entire universe with all kinds of bodies like human beings, demigods, demons, beasts, birds, serpents, you name it. A lot of very famous personalities like Garuda, Takshak, Shanishchar, Rahu, Ketu, Rudras, Vasus, Gandharvas, you name them. They were all the children of these 60 women. So that was a story that Shukadeva Goswami told King Parikshit. But after this, King Parikshit kind of, he changed the topic. And he asked Shukadeva Goswami, well, I heard that the spiritual master of the demigods, does anybody know what the name is? What is the name of the spiritual master of the demigods?
Brihaspati?
Yes, correct. Brihaspati. So he said, I heard that Brihaspati got really upset with the demigods and he rejected them. And he said that so what was the offense that the demigods committed against their spiritual master? And he said, please tell me about this. So that's when we go to chapter 7. And Shukdev Goswami starts that once upon a time, Indra was sitting with his wife, Shachi Devi, and he was sitting on his throne with her, being praised by everybody present. They were singing his praises. Apsaras were dancing for him, all along having a great time. And at that time, Brihaspati, their spiritual master, entered that assembly. But Indra was just so absorbed in enjoying all this praise and the dancing and the music. And, of course, he was puffed up with his material opulence, so much so that he did not offer his respectful welcome to his own guru. He didn't rise from the seat, nor did he offer a seat to his guru. Well, Brihaspati was offended, actually seriously offended. And he said, this disciple of mine, Indra, has become too puffed up. And so he immediately left the assembly with the hope of, or in the expectation of teaching Indra and the demigods a lesson. And, give Indra credit, he immediately understood that he had made a mistake and he was repenting. So he left the palace to look for his guru so he may beg his forgiveness. But he couldn't find him anywhere. And Indra knew in his heart that, look, what I have done is not auspicious, it's not good for me, and I might lose my fortune. And that made him feel very disturbed in his mind, but it was too late. So sure enough, because of his disrespectful behavior toward his spiritual master, the demons heard about this and they knew this is the right time. So they attacked the demigods and they won. So great fight, but the demigods lost. Indra lost his throne and not knowing what to do, so Indra did what he always does. He went to Lord Brahma and explained to him what everything happened. Understanding the situation, Lord Brahma first chastised him and the demigods. What are you guys doing? How can you offend your own spiritual master? And he said, look, your defeat is direct result of your misbehavior towards your guru. And he said, don't you remember that one time demons had done the same thing to their guru, Shukracharya, and they were defeated? Now you have done it and you are being defeated. So, on the other hand, the demons have made up with their spiritual master, Shukracharya. So now they are more powerful. And so he said, look, what you need to do now is you approach this person by the name of Vishwarupa and ask him to become your spiritual master and your priest. And he said, I know that he's junior to you in age and position, but you do that anyway. So the demigods went to him collectively, and Vishwarupa recognized that he was junior and all that, but he said, because you're requesting me, and I should not refuse the request of a more senior personality, I will accept your request to become your priest and your guru. And I said, even though becoming your priest will mean a loss of my Brahmanical powers, but I'll do it anyway. And then he composed actually compose is not the right word, because as it turns out, the Dichi had made this before. But anyway, he gave a very nice protective prayer known as Narayan Kavach to Indra and the demigods. So, with the help of, or under the guidance of, I should say, of Vishwarupa, the demigods performed this great fire sacrifice, and as a result of which they were able to conquer the demons. And I'll tell you details in a minute. But what I want to point out is that Vishwarupa was a very interesting character. Vishwarupa is the one who's acting as their priest now, or their guru now. He actually had 3 heads he used one head to drink somras, the other head to drink wine, and the third head to eat food. And if you recall, I was talking about how the 60 girls had given birth to different children in different families, including demons. So his father, Twashta, was the son of one of these girls. So therefore, he was related to the demigods from his father's side. But Twashta was married to a woman who came from a demoniac family. So therefore, he was related to the demons from his mother's side. So being related to both sides, he had his sympathies, his favorable attitude towards both sides. So visibly he offered oblations into the fire, chanting mantras like Indraya Namaha, or not Namaha, Indraya Idam Swaha, Idam Agnaye, things like that. That is offering oblations to Indra, to fire god, etc. That was doing loudly and openly. But secretly, he also offered oblations to the demons because of his sympathies and relationship with them. This went on for a while, but soon Indra noticed that he's doing that. And so Indra's first reaction was he was afraid that now I'll be defeated by the demons again. So he got so angry at that thought that he actually cut off all the 3 heads of Vishwarupa from his shoulders. But then he realized that Vishwarupa is a Brahmin, and killing a Brahmin is a great sin. And even though Indra has the power to neutralize whatever the sinful reactions would be from killing a Brahmin, but he didn't do that. He actually was seriously repenting this. So he accepted the sinful reaction. But Indra being Indra, he found 4 living entities, 4 different types of living entities, to share his sinful reactions, which is kind of interesting. If you give 25% each to 4 people, you got nothing left. So basically, at the end of the exercise, Indra was left with no sins from the sin of killing the Brahmin. So what did he do? He distributed 25% of the reactions among the land, 25% each, I should say, 25% each among the land, water, trees, and women. So, in exchange for...
Prabhuji, sorry, what's the 4th one?
Sorry. So you have the land, you have water, you have trees, and women.
Okay.
Okay? So, in exchange for Indra's benediction, that the ditches in the earth would be filled automatically, the earth took 25% of Indra's sinful reaction. Similarly, I'm sorry, before I say that, but as a result of accepting Indra's sinful reaction, 25%, various portions of various sizes of the earth turn into desert. So wherever you see a desert on earth, that's the result of the sinful reaction of Indra killing Brahman Vishwarupa. So that's one. The second was that in return for Indra's benediction, that the branches and the twigs of a tree would grow back when they are trimmed. Trees also took 25%, and as a result, they produce sap which drips from them, and that sap is prohibited for drinking. So that was their sinful reaction. Then, in return for the benediction, to enjoy their lusty desires continuously, even during pregnancy, women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reaction, because of which they have menstrual periods. And finally, in return for Indra's benediction, that water would increase the volume of other substances with which it was mixed. Water also accepted for 25% of the sinful reactions. As a result, bubbles and foam appear in water. And when that happens, any water containing bubbles or foam cannot be used for any purpose. Not for drinking, and certainly not for achaman, etc. in the worship. So, I'm going to pause for a second and see if there are any questions or clarifications anybody's looking for. Anything?
Prabhuji, I just I don't know if I missed something or not, but when their spiritual master is angry, instead of begging for forgiveness, why is Indra told to seek for another alternative?
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm saying instead of begging for forgiveness from the spiritual master, Indra was told to go and look for an alternative Vishwarupa, right?
Yes. So the reason was he could not find the Guru to apologize to him. He did try everywhere, but he couldn't find.
But is this not against the religion? I mean, usually if the spiritual master is present, one should not go and seek guidance or another accept another spiritual master or something.
So you're talking about the Vaishnava mood. We're talking about the demigods. And because they perform 5 sacrifices for their whatever desires to be satisfied, there's no alternative but to have a guru. So if your guru is not present, you have to do that. As opposed to us, where we can go by the Vani. But he wasn't going with that. Okay. And clearly he had the approval from Lord Brahma, so I guess he wasn't that wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? Any questions, comments?
Thank you, I have a question.
Yes, Prabhu, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Is it not a sinful Is it not another sinful reaction by Indra by transferring the 25% to each?
Sorry, Prabhu, say again.
Is it not another sinful reaction from Indra by transferring the 25% to each, like earth, land, woman? Is it audible?
No, I can hear you, but I'm just not sure what's the question. So you're saying he distributed to 4 different entities, but what's your question? I didn't understand your question.
Yeah, is it not another sinful reaction by Indra?
Is it sinful to distribute your sinful reactions?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you, bro. So, first of all, to be honest with you, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, that would be nice, a rich person says, I'll give you $1 million, take my sins, so I can go to heaven. So I didn't even know you could do that, but listen, I got to go by what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, and maybe the demigods can do that. That's all I can say. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I know that you and I cannot do that. For sure. Okay, Prabhu? So I'm not sure if it's a satisfactory answer, but that's all I know.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I had the same question in my mind, like how could Indra transfer his sins to innocent people? Like, so that means they are powerful, like they're powerful enough to do these things.
Well, clearly, that's what I'm saying. You and I cannot do that, but he's powerful enough. And then he was also giving some benediction that they wanted, I guess. So this was a trade, not just a force that you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, all right, then I'll keep going. Well, so after Indra killed Vishwarup, his father, whose name was Tvashta, who was the son of one of these women that we talked about earlier, he was very angry. Like, it was natural, you kill somebody's son, father will be angry. So then he performed a fire sacrifice with the desire to find a way to kill Indra. So now in this fire sacrifice chanted a mantra to increase Indra's enemies. But he chanted the mantra wrong, and so instead of producing a demon who will be the enemy of Indra, he ended up producing an enemy whose enemy was Indra. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, so I'm going to slow down. He wanted to increase the population of those who were Indra's enemies. Specifically, he wanted to produce one personality who would be Indra's enemy. But because he chanted the mantra wrong, and I'll explain that in a minute, how he did that, because he chanted the mantra wrong, he ended up producing a demon who felt no enmity towards Indra, but Indra felt enmity towards him. Now, is that clear? I need to hear somebody's yes or no.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The one who created is Indra's enemy. Indra felt so.
Indra felt envy, yes. Enmity. Okay, so now I want to explain that here is the big benefit of Mahamantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You can mispronounce the mantra, you can mispronounce Krishna's name, you can mispronounce Ram's name, you can say Hare in 15 different ways, but the result is still the same and favorable. But that is not so with other mantras. If not pronounced properly, if not chanted properly, they will not produce the desired result. So actually it was so serious that, if you recall, we've talked about this in the past, that when they performed fire sacrifices where an animal was killed, the purpose was, and they did not use any weapons to do that, they used by the mantras, but the purpose used to be to test the efficacy of the mantra and to test the ability of the chanter to chant the mantra properly. So if either one was not good enough, then the animal would not be killed or be revived. So this is how important it is for these other mantras to be chanted perfectly right. So this is what happened here. So the mantra that Twasta intended to chant contained two words called Indra Shatru. So pay attention to how I'm saying this. Indra Shatru, which means enemy of Indra. So in other words, Indra and Shatru are uttered very close to each other. It's called short mantra. But Twasta chanted it incorrectly and he made it long. So he said Indra Shatru, which means Indra is the enemy. Indra Shatru means enemy of Indra. Indra Shatru means Indra is the enemy. Is that making sense? Am I explaining this well enough? Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's what happened. So therefore, a demon by the name of Vritrasur was generated from the sacrifice. But Vritrasur felt no enmity towards Indra. But Indra was a great enemy, or became a great enemy of Vritrasur. Now Vritrasur got his name because he was so huge that he covered all the planetary systems with his body. So Vritra means to cover. So Vritrasur means the demon who covers everything. Hence Vritrasur. And his features were so fierce that the whole world became afraid just looking at him. So the purpose of this was to start the battle between demigods and the demons. So when demigods realized that, they started attacking Vritrasur with all the weapons they had. But you know what Vritrasur did? He swallowed all their weapons. And the demigods were standing there stunned, what's happened here? And they felt they had no means of protection. So what do? They start worshipping, praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they realize that He's the only one who can protect anybody from any kind of fear or any kind of danger. So Srimad Bhagavatam actually goes on a tangent for a second.
Lapit Sujun Boni.
Okay, I've muted everyone, so hopefully it'll be fine now. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam goes on a tangent for a second to explain this point of why the demigods went straight to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says that seeking the shelter of a demigod instead of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like trying to cross the ocean by grasping the tail of a dog. So visualize, you're trying to save your life in the middle of an ocean, and you see a dog swimming, and you grab onto his tail and say, oh, he'll take me across. Well, dog can swim, but he's not strong enough that he can pull you all the way to the shores of the ocean. So demigods similarly, and this is why in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has basically condemned demigod worship. He uses terms like tad bhavati alpa medisa, that people who worship demigods basically have no intelligence or very small amount of intelligence. Or avidhi purvakam, worshipping a demigod is not prescribed. So many places like that, Krishna condemns the demigod worship. So same thing here, Srimad Bhagavatam is saying that so demigod at least knew that instead of going to anybody else, they should simply go straight to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they prayed. So that pleased the Lord, and He advised them to approach another very famous personality by the name of Dadichi. And he said, you go to him, he's a rishi. Actually, he used to be a king. Then he became a rishi, and beg him for the bones of his own body. Now, can you imagine? Can you imagine just for a second that somebody comes to you and says, you are so charitable, can I please have all your bones of your body? What would be your reaction? You probably will tell him a name of a place where he should go, right? And so the Lord said, this is what you have to do. And the Lord said, don't worry, the Dadichi would comply with your request. And with the help of his bones, Vritrasur will be killed. It is what I was going to say, that Dadichi is the person who originally wrote the Narayan Kavach and gave it to Twishta, who gave it to his son Vishwarupa, who then gave it to Indra. So this is how it came across. It was the Narayan Kavach that made the Dadichi's bones so strong. Anyway, so the story is that, before I go there, so the Lord said, knowing the story that I was going to say, He said, Indra, you ask Ashwini Kumaras, who are kind of, doctor demigods, ask them to beg for the Dadichi's body, because he has so much affection for them, he will not say no to them. So you do that. And he said that, the Lord said that Vishwakarma, the architect of the demigods, he will take the bones and construct a thunderbolt that you would be able to kill Vritrasur with. And especially because now this thunderbolt would be invested with my powers. And then Lord said something very interesting. He said, Indra, don't fear Vritrasur, because he is a devotee and he will never be envious of you. I'm going to explain that in a little while, but I'm going to digress for a second, and I'm going to tell you the story. It's a connected story about the Dadichi and Indra. So what happened was that Dadichi had, it was a great rishi, and therefore he had lots of spiritual knowledge, and he was also into performance of fruitive activities. So the Ashwini Kumaras had heard of him, his reputation. So once they approached him and begged him, Dadichi, to instruct them in a spiritual science called Brahma Vidya. So Dadichi, when he said, I'm right now I'm a little bit busy. If you come back later, I will do that. So they said, okay, they left. But Indra found out about Ashwini Kumaras approaching Dadichi for this. So he went to Dadichi and said, my dear Muni, these Ashwini Kumaras are only physicians, they're just doctors. Please don't instruct them in a spiritual science. And then he said that if you don't listen to me, if you impart the spiritual science to them, despite my warning, I'll punish you by cutting off your head. So when I read that, my first reaction was, something doesn't make sense. Why would Indra care that Ashwini Kumaras will have this knowledge? So I found out that actually the spiritual knowledge Ashwini Kumaras were talking about was consistent with their position of doctors, because it gave them a method to revive a dead person. And I'm not sure why, but Indra did not want these two guys to have that power, so he told Dadichi to not do that. So Ashwini Kumaras came back, and they were told by Dadichi what Indra had said. So they said to Dadichi, we really want this knowledge. So here's a solution we're going to give to you. What we will do is we'll cut your head off, and we'll replace it with the head of a horse. Then with that head of a horse, you can instruct this Brahma Vidya to us. And when Indra finds out, he'll come to you, he'll cut your head off, which is the head of the horse, and we'll come back and put the original head on you. That way we will restore your original head. So because Dadichi had already promised to give this knowledge to the Ashwini Kumaras, he agreed to their proposal, and then, as I said in the story, the whole thing happened. So I'm going to pause again for a minute and see if there are any questions or comments before I carry on. I just hope it's not too confusing, because there's so many players and so many unbelievable things are happening.
These are unfathomable proposals that will cut your head, will give you the head of a horse, and will give you the head back.
True. Although that's not the only time that has happened. Like, Ganeshji, same thing, right?
Yeah.
And Shukracharya and the demons, including Bali Maharaj, same thing. So I mean, it has happened. A lot of things in our scriptures seem like out of this world, because they are. Okay.
Prabhu, you said something about you said that someone said something about this Vritrasur, that he's free from envy, he's a devotee. What was that sentence? Can you please repeat that again?
So hold on, we'll come to that story.
All right.
We'll tell the background and everything, okay? Just give me a minute. It's a long story, that's why I don't want to just answer it now. But we will cover it tonight.
Prabhuji, why was Dg so affectionate towards the Ashwini Kumaras? I mean,
yeah. So basically, as I said, they had come to him and begged for this knowledge, and so when you beg, you serve the person. So Dadichi had developed a lot of affection for them, as his disciples also, but otherwise also.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Sure.
And Prabhuji, is it the same Vritrasur who recited wonderful prayers when his head was being cut off?
So again, going back to what Damodar was saying, I'll answer all that in a few minutes. Okay, I want to tell you the whole story about that thing. Okay? Anything else?
Prabhu, I just have one generic question.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
So when we read all these different stories in Bhagavatam, wherein somebody's head is killed, a demon is killed, so when a normal person, like when somebody in today's, let's say, especially in the West, when they read it, they have these questions around like, how is that humanly possible? So like, what should be our context or understanding behind reading such stories? Like, how should we take those?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Prabhu, because as you say, it is very commonly asked question, and not just in the West, Prabhu. In the East also, especially in India, a lot of people call this mythology for that very reason, because if you can't believe it, it must be mythology. But these are all historical incidents. So essentially, and actually people are starting to find out now, the mantras are very powerful. If you know the right mantra, if you practice it the right way, if you chant it the right way, they're very powerful. A nuclear bomb can be created, as we know from the stories. All sorts of other things, transfer a baby from one womb to another womb, taking 100 parts of embryo that has been broken, an embryo that has been broken in 100 parts, putting it in parts and producing real children, people putting their ejections in the parts and producing children. I mean, so many different stories like that. Parashuram killed his mother on the promise of his father that he will revive her. So many stories like that. But it's because they were very powerful people due to their ability to know, learn, and recite the mantras. So all the powers came from them. And now actually, especially in Germany and a few other countries and in India, people are finding out some of these mantras and using them for doing powerful things. So it is very slowly, but it's coming back. But it's all about those mantras. This is how they got their powers. But see, they performed austerities for 50,000 years, 60,000 years, 10,000 years. Hiranyakashipu did for, 100,000 years. Like long term before you get these powers. So just because we're talking about a few people who have these powers doesn't mean even in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, everybody had that power. So these are very special people. They were not common occurrences. They were very special occurrences. So I don't know, Brijendana Prabhu, if I'm answering your question, but
yes, Prabhu.
So I understand it.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. I don't know why, but I'm just recalling a conversation I had with my brother many years ago. And we were talking about Bollywood songs. And his statement was that in the 60s, we had amazing songs. The song quality has gone down so much. And my answer was, in India, I would say maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 songs are produced in Bollywood, that is, every year. And we remember maybe 15. So yeah, 15 great songs, but other 4,985 songs were horrible. So same thing. There were few powerful people that we read about in Srimad Bhagavatam. There were millions of others who were just ordinary people like you and me. Okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right. So once they received their instructions from the Lord, the demigods along with Indra, they approached Dadiji. And so of course Ashwini Kumaras, and they begged for the body of Dadiji. But I guess Dadiji had a very nice sense of humor. So he refused to give up his body. And he said, don't you understand or don't you realize how painful it is for one to leave his body? Because we are all so attached to the body. And the demigods suddenly became philosophers. And they said, the people who are too self-interested, they're only interested in themselves. When they beg something from somebody, they don't realize the pain they're causing the person they're asking from. Because if they did, they would not ask for it. And similarly, if somebody is able to give in charity, but doesn't understand the difficulty that the beggar is in and refuse because they cannot understand what kind of difficulty the beggar is having. If they did, they'll give him anything. in the charity. So when the Digi Muni heard that, he started laughing. And he said, I just wanted to hear something along the lines of religious principles from you guys. But and that's why I refused. But I will give it up. I'll give up my body. So don't worry, because you're coming here with a higher purpose. And upon the instruction of the Lord, so I'll become an instrument of my Lord to help you do whatever it is that you want to do. He said, and besides, after my death, the body would be eaten by dogs and jackals anyway, so I may as well engage my body for the benefit of other people. And then he focused his soul on the top of his head, and I shouldn't say that. I should say focus his soul upon the lotus feet of the Lord, and he gave up his body. So they collected the body with the help of Vishwakarma. A thunderbolt was prepared with the bones, and the thunderbolt was given to Indra as his main weapon. And the demigods prepared to fight with the demons, and they attacked the army of Vritrasur. Now this was, at the end of Satyug, beginning of Treta Yuga. So this is like, we talk about maybe 2 million years ago, these things happened. Anyway, great fight between the demigods and the demons. And the demons were the demigods had become so strong now, psychologically and otherwise, that the demons basically left the battle, they ran away. And as they were fleeing the battle, Vritrasur was getting very upset and was shouting them, saying, what are you doing? Fight for yourself. Why are you so afraid of death? He said, there are two ways to have glorious death. One is to die as you're performing devotional service, absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord. And the other is to die in the battlefield. And he says that if you are victorious, it's the same thing that Krishna told Arjuna. If you're victorious in the battle, you gain material possessions. If you die in the battle, you go to heaven. So either way, you benefit. So why are you running away? But the demons were not in the mood to hear their commander's advice. So they kept running, and Vritrasur said, you guys are cowards. And he stood alone to face the demigods. But then he noticed that the demigods were still chasing the demons, who were fleeing and showing their backs towards them. So then he started to chastise the demigods. And he says, what is this? You call yourself brave warriors, and you're attacking somebody who's running away from you? Attacking somebody who's afraid of their life? That kind of killing is not glorious. And it certainly cannot be promoted to heavenly planets if you do that. And he says, I'm here, all of you, I'm here alone, don't worry about it, but I'm here, you fight with me, I'm challenging you to fight with me. Well, the demigods heard Vritrasur, they noted his attitude, and they became so afraid that they practically fainted. And Vritrasur, as I was saying, such a big size, he simply started trampling all over them. Just literally trampling upon them. Indra noticed that, and he couldn't tolerate that his soldiers, the demigods, were being trampled like this. So he went like this with his thunderbolt and threw it at Vritrasur. But Vritrasur, actually Srimad Bhagavatam says, he was such a hero that he literally caught the club with his left hand and rotated it and threw it back at Indra, but Indra's elephant. Struck by this thunderbolt, the elephant was pushed back, Bhagavatam says, 14 yards, and his head burst open and he fell in great distress while Indra was still on his back. So try to imagine somebody sitting on top of an elephant falls down, and the man falls with the elephant. When Indra noticed what has happened, he felt very morose. He thought this was it, this was his end. So Vritrasur noticed that Indra is looking really morose. So he refrained from attacking Indra again. Although he could have unfinished Indra, but he didn't do that. Indra took advantage of this opportunity of not being attacked him, and he touched his elephant. By the way, anybody knows the name of the elephant? Just quick question.
Airavat.
Correct. Yes, Airavat. And so he touched the head of Airavat with his finger. His finger can produce nectar. So with that nectar, he was able to revive the elephant, and he got back on the back of the elephant. And Vritrasur noticed that Indra is now sitting there with a thunderbolt in his hand, desiring to fight again. That's when Vritrasur remembered how Indra had first accepted Vishwarup as his spiritual master and his priest, and then killed him. So he reminded Indra of his heinous activities. And he declared that I'm going to now kill you, Indra, because I need to free myself from the death of my brother Vishnu. And then he said something very interesting. He said, if on the other hand, you kill me, Indra, then I will offer my body to other living entities like jackals and vultures. And I will consider it a great fortune if at that moment I could receive the dust of a pure devotee like Narad Muni. So now the devotee in Vritrasur is coming out. And then he told Indra, don't hesitate to attack me with your thunderbolt, because I'm telling you this will work. This will work surely because Lord Vishnu has sided with you and he's invested his powers in this thunderbolt. But for me, my death will free me from material bondage. And by fixing my mind on Lord Sankarshan, I will attain the same destination as Narad Muni. And then he gave further philosophy. He said, Indra, people who surrender to the Lord and always think of him, they become his personal servants. And you know, in return, the Lord never bestows material benefits upon them. And then he offered a prayer to the Lord, begging him to make him a servant of his servants. And he says, my only desire is that by doing that, I may constantly glorify you, my Lord, and engage in your service. And I may become unattached to worldly things. He says, my dear Lord, I don't desire to be promoted to heavenly kingdom. Nor do I desire to become the supreme ruler of all the planets. Nor do I want liberation if the cost or the price that I have to pay is giving up your lotus feet. Imagine, demon is saying that. And then Vritrasur says something that I'm telling you literally stole my heart. He said, my dear Lord, baby birds that have not yet developed their wings, they always look for their mother to return and feed them. And he said, and as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously for the time of milking when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers. And then he said another example, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects. He said, just like them, I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto you. And when I read that, my reaction was, wow, this is the prayer of a demon? And, you know, I don't know what that makes me because I've never prayed like that. Any questions or comments?
Can you repeat those three things?
Oh, sure.
So nice.
Yeah. So first one was that as the baby birds, before they have developed wings so they cannot fly away, they wait for their mother to return from wherever they have gone to bring food and to feed them when they return. Have you seen a mother bird feeding a baby bird from the beak to beak?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Beautiful scene.
So, yes.
Beautiful scene. Right? And it says, similarly, just like a calf waits for milking time, so when the mother cow will return and the calf will be allowed to drink the milk of their mother. Right? And third example he gave was just like a wife whose husband has gone away for whatever business reasons, is feeling very morose in the separation and just longing for him to come back and satisfy her in all aspects. He said, just like that, I'm also yearning for an opportunity to render direct service to you. So he's basically saying that's the degree, that's the intensity of his desire to serve you.
Yeah.
Remember, we always talk about it has to come from the heart. The baby bird, the calf, and the wife, they're yearning from their heart to get their mothers, or their husband to be with them. He's saying, I want the same kind of an opportunity. I'm waiting with the same degree of intensity and desire for you to allow me to serve you. Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, all right, then I'll keep going. Okay, so after Vritrasur finished talking, then he released his trident against Indra with great anger and with great force. But Indra now had his thunderbolt in his hand, so he broke the trident to pieces, and at the same time he cut off one of Vritrasur's arms. So now he was fighting with one hand only. Nevertheless, he used his remaining arm to strike Indra with an iron mace that made the thunderbolt fall from the hands of Indra. Now Indra felt very ashamed that Vritrasur with just one arm made him lose his weapon. He actually was so ashamed he did not even pick up the thunderbolt from the ground. But he is Vritrasur. He's standing there, not attacking Indra anymore, saying, it's okay, Indra, go ahead, pick it up. Pick it up and then fight. And then he gave him some further instructions actually. And he said, Supreme God is the cause of victory and defeat. Right? Karmanevadhikaraste ma phalesh kadachana. Right? What's the other verse in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2? Sukh dukhe samay kritva labha labho jaya jaya. Tato yuddha yujyasva. Which basically says, don't worry about the victory and defeat, it's in the hand of the gods. God, I mean. So just fight. So Vritrasur said, only fools take credit for their victory or defeat, because they just don't know that the results are under the control of the Lord. And we, the fighters, are just like a puppet. We're doing our thing, but the results are up to Krishna or up to God. And because they cannot see, or they do not see the hand of the Lord in everything that happens, these fools consider themselves to be the ruler or controller of everything. However, when one understands that the real controller is the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is freed from dualities like distress, happiness, and fear. And he pointed out to Indra, like, look, even though you have cut off one of my arms, I'm not morose, I'm not sad, I'm not upset. I'm still trying my best to fight you. So therefore, Indra, you should do the same thing. Because, as I said, the results of this battle are in the hands of the Lord, not in our hands. So Indra finally got it. The straightforward words that came from the mouth of Vritrasur had their impact. Indra picked up the thunderbolt, praised Vritrasur for being such a great devotee despite being born as a demon. And they started the fight. So they praised each other, they engaged in philosophical discourse if you want to use the word, and they started fighting. But this time Indra was more powerful. He severed the other arm of Vritrasur. When that happened, Vritrasur assumed a gigantic form and he swallowed Indra along with his elephant. But now Indra was protected by Narayan Kavach. So he was able to protect himself even when inside the body of Vritrasur, and he cut off the abdomen of Vritrasur and came out, and he severed Vritrasur's head from his body with his thunderbolt. However, does anybody know how long it took him to do that? Anybody knows? How long did it take Indra to cut the head of Vritrasur off?
1 year, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji, 1 year, exactly right. 1 year it took to cut his head off. But when he finally did, Vritrasur's soul entered the spiritual world and he became an eternal associate of Lord Sankarshan. Okay, so now Vritrasur is dead. Everyone is satisfied. But Indra is not. He's not very happy. Because he knew Vritrasur's position. And he could understand that he is again entangled by sinful reactions because Vritrasur was a Brahmin and a devotee. And actually he could see the sinful reactions personified following him, and they were disguised as a Chandal woman. So desiring to rid himself of his sins, Indra tried to, he fled like everywhere. But wherever he went, there was this woman. He fled to the sky, but there was this woman. So finally he went to a lake called Manas Sarovar. And there he took the shelter of Mother Lakshmi and meditated for 1000 years in the stem of a lotus flower. So once again, it's starting to sound kind of hyperbolic, but that's what Srimad Bhagavatam says. So ultimately he was relieved of all the sins because for these 1000 years he was worshipping Lord Vishnu. Karmani nidhati kinducha bhakti bhaja, as Brahma Samhita says, by worshipping Lord Vishnu, his sinful reactions were eradicated. Then he was called back to heaven and reinstated in his position as the king of the demigods after performing a horse sacrifice. Okay, now I'm going to try and answer the question that Damodar Charan Prabhu and then Sonam later was asking. And I want to tell you, good question, because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to know the same thing. He was astonished that a demon could rise to the exalted position of a devotee. And he had his doubts, just like I think some of us have. You know, what's going on here? So he inquired. He inquired from Shukadeva Goswami. I mean, Maharaj Parikshit was lucky he had Shukadeva Goswami. All you got is me. So, big difference. Anyway, so he said, you know, how can a demon like Vritrasur become an exalted devotee like he became? So then Shukadeva Goswami answered his question by describing the previous life of Vritrasur, previous birth, in which he was a king by the name of Chitraketu. Would anybody like to endeavor a guess how many wives Chitraketu had? Just wild guess, because the number is wild too.
1 crore.
2.
I'm sorry?
1 crore. 1 crore.
1 crore. How many is that? 100 million? Or is it 10 million?
10 million.
10 million. Yes, that's correct. Yes. 10 million wives. Very good. Oh, by the way, that's my sister, Anuradha from Lucknow. Okay, so yeah, so 10 million wives, no sons, 0 sons. So once upon a time, and that made him obviously very sad. So once upon a time, there was a rishi by the name of Angira. He happened to come to his kingdom, was received nicely by the king, and Rishi Angira inquired about how king's life was going, about his welfare. And the king said that I'm very upset and I'm very morose because I have no children. The sage, and he requested Angira Rishi to do something about this. So Angira Rishi then performed a fire sacrifice, and he gave the remnants of the food offered in that sacrifice to the king's first wife, whose name was Chitraketu. And then the sage told the king that you will have a son, but the son will be the cause of both jubilation and lamentation for you. But the king was so happy to hear that he's going to have a son, he didn't pay any attention to this point made by Angira Rishi. Anyway, very soon the queen gave birth to a son, which was a cause for celebration in the palace. So everybody, including the king and the residents of the palace, or most of them, were very, very happy. However, the other 9,999,999 wives were not so happy, because they noticed that all the attention from the king was now going to the first wife who had borne the son. So one day, in their envy, they administered poison to the child, who was barely a few months old at that time. When the child passed away, Chitraketu, you can imagine his wife, they were just overwhelmed with sorrow and shock. It was so bad that Chitraketu started talking to his son who was dead, and he started begging him to please don't go to Yamraj, stay with me, I'm your father. Well, Angira Muni understood what's going on, so he decided to come visit King Chitraketu again, but this time he brought Narad Muni with him. When they came, Angira Muni started to explain to King Chitraketu and his wife some philosophy, and he basically said, look, all relationships in the material world are temporary. This same way your relationship with your with your son is not factual relationship. It's simply illusory energy. This relationship between you and him as father and son did not exist before, nor will it stay in future. This is simply an arrangement of time made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that this relationship exists but only in the present. So don't lament for temporary relationships. The entire cosmic manifestation is temporary. So whatever appears will disappear. And this is the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that everything created in the material world is transient. Here today, gone tomorrow. And so he said, similarly, it is the temporary arrangement of the Lord that a father begets a child, or a living entity becomes a child of a so-called father. So please don't lament. And they gave further instructions. Finally, they convinced Chitraketu that he was being ignorant in mourning the loss of his son, and he was calmed, and the queen was calmed, and the Narad Muni gave a mantra called Mahavidya. Some places says Madhu Vidya, to King Chitraketu, and said, if you properly chant this mantra, you will be able to see Lord Sankarshan face to face in only 7 days. Amazing mantra. So I guess he took the initiation and chanted the Mahavidya or Madhuvidya mantra for 1 week, and he was actually in the presence of Lord Sankarshan. who was surrounded by 4 Kumaras. And if anybody has the 6th canto with you, you see the cover page. The picture of Lord Sankarshan, the 4 Kumaras, and King Chitraketu. So that's the picture that we're talking about. So King Chitraketu offered his prayers to the Lord, and he received wonderful knowledge about the Lord from the Lord himself. Okay. So after this, oh, maybe I should pause. Any questions or comments? Nothing? Okay, all right. So we'll keep going. Okay. So then the king, that's King Chitraketu, he was given an airplane by somebody, I forget by whom. So he started enjoying his life with many women in the airplane. But he was constantly engaged in the chanting of the glories of the Lord, the names of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, etc., qualities of the Lord. And he was traveling in the outer space doing that. One day, he flew over a mountain where Lord Shiva was sitting in the assembly of great sages. Narad Muni was there, so many other rishis were there. And Mother Parvati, his wife, was sitting on the lap of Lord Shiva, being embraced by Lord Shiva at the same time. So Chitraketu, seeing Lord Shiva in that situation, laughed, and laughed very loudly. And he spoke so everybody, including Mother Parvati, could hear. And he said, how wonderful it is. How wonderful it is that Lord Shiva is embracing his wife in the midst of an assembly of great sages. It's like he's a shameless, ordinary person. Well, Lord Shiva also heard that, but he didn't react. He just smiled. Mother Parvati became very angry. Not because he said something to her, but because she could not tolerate her husband being insulted by somebody. So she cursed him. She cursed him to take birth in the family of a demon. And it's because of that curse, Chitraketu later appeared as demon Vritrasur, about whom we just talked. Well, so Chitraketu was cursed, but because he was such a pure devotee, he was not at all upset by this curse from Mother Parvati. He actually stopped his plane, descended from his plane, bowed down before her with great humility. And he spoke. He said, my dear mother, in this material world, one is sometimes cursed and sometimes favored. And thus he continues his life. He sometimes enjoys in the upper planetary systems, and sometimes he suffers in the lower planetary systems. But all these situations are same because they are within this material world. And being in this material world, none of these positions have any factual existence. Why? Because they're all temporary. Just like we were talking before, they're all temporary. Here today, gone tomorrow. And he said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate controller. And he creates situations for the living being within it. So they go through so-called happy situations, so-called miserable situations. And then he got up on his plane and left. Well, all the rishis who were in that assembly were astonished when they heard Chitraketu speak like that. And Lord Shiva, spoke to his wife Parvati about the glories of the devotees. And I'm going to share my screen with you and see if I can put this mantra, not mantra, the verse that Lord Shiva spoke. There you go. Would anybody like to read 6.17.28?
I can try, Prabhu.
Please go, yeah.
Narayana Parasarve na kutaschana bhayati swarga pavarga narakeshu api tulyartha darshina.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. So basically, he's talking about devotees. Narayana Para, those who are completely dedicated and know nothing but Lord Narayan. And Sarva means all of them. So everyone who is a pure devotee of the Lord Narayan. Nakutastan bibhati. Bibhati means fear. So they never fear anything in life or any condition of life. Swarga is heaven. So they put them in heaven. Apavarg is the material world. It's the opposite of, Apavarg is the liberation. Pavarg is material world. So whether you put them in heavenly kingdom or you grant them liberation from the material world or you send them to hellish planets. For a pure devotee, they're all the same. All the same, because he is only interested in serving the Lord. So his mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. So therefore, being in heavenly planets or hellish planets or granting them liberation from the material world means nothing. It's all the same. Wherever he goes, he serves Krishna. The closest example I can think of is that if you have a small child who's watching his favorite show on TV, you can yell his name out any number of times you want, but he doesn't pay attention. His mind is focused on the show. So similarly, a pure devotee's mind is so focused on the lotus feet of the Lord. He's so focused on thinking about the pastimes, the qualities, the form, the name of the Lord, that nothing else matters. You can do whatever you want, but he's just happy. So this is why Lord Chaitanya said, I don't want money, I don't want women, I don't want fame. Just allow me to serve you in a causeless manner. So that's what a pure devotee wants. And once he gets to that, you cannot divert his attention from that. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so once Lord Shiva explained that to everybody and Mother Parvati, they were all very satisfied. They understood the position of Chitraketu, and of course, as I said, because of that curse, Chitraketu appeared as Vritrasur, and now you know the rest of the story. So I have to first ask Damodar Charan Prabhu and Sonam if the question is answered. If not, I'll try to answer it differently.
Yes, Prabhuji. But Prabhuji, I was just thinking that Chitraketu, Vritrasur in his previous birth, being such an exalted devotee that in next birth as well he was able to recite all those wonderful prayers, he ended up committing an offense for Mother Parvati, who happens to be the wife of the greatest Vaishnava.
No, the other way. He committed offense against Lord Shiva. And
Okay.
Mother Shiva.
Okay, because she is sitting. Okay. Okay. So I was just thinking that after being such an exalted devotee, he still committed the Vaishnava Aparadh. So I am nowhere. So then yesterday also we were talking about Vaishnava offense. So is this because it's a part of that Leela that it had to happen, or how can somebody avoid committing such offenses?
So totally you are right that pure devotees do not make these kind of offenses. But remember what Vritrasur said. He said that the Lord creates situations for living entities. So it is that situation that Lord has created that inspired King Chitraketu, who had audience with Lord Sankarshan for, face to face. He ended up committing an offense like that. Although he did not mean it that way, but it came out as an offense, and as a result was cursed. But he maintained his pure devotional attitude by not getting upset with that. Actually, very humbly accepting it. And then, as you said, just like Jad Bharat did not Vritrasur did not forget his prayers, his philosophy, his understanding, his attitude, all of those things. And that's why it says Nehabikram Nashosti Prattivayo na Vidyate. Right? It's never diminished. It's never lost. Even in the next birth.
So, Prabhuji, the course of action in such, in this case, for us should be to accept our mistake and then to accept the consequence. If the other Vaishnava is getting offended and they are saying anything back to us, so we should be ready to accept whatever is coming our way after we know that we've committed some offense.
Correct. So we should be willing to accept whatever comes our way anyway, as Krishna's plan, as Krishna's mercy. And when bad things are happening, have this firm faith that could have been 1,000 times worse. By Krishna's mercy, I'm only getting a little hint of this. And when you do that, then the attitude changes and the pain goes away. The situation may not change, but the pain goes away. Now, a different way I like to explain to people, which is not very devotional, but still philosophical, and that is, you, generally speaking, you have bad situation because of your bad karmas. And you have a good situation because of your good karmas. So if you look at this philosophically, if your bad karmas are being exhausted, when you're going through bad situation, that means your bad karmas are being exhausted. So what's so bad about bad karmas being exhausted? So therefore you should be happy. Right? Similarly, when you're going through a good situation, your good karmas are being exhausted. What's so great about good karmas being exhausted? Therefore you should not be overly happy. So when you start looking at things like that, life becomes equipoised, which is what Krishna says he wants in us. Equipoised mindset.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Sure. That's like our modern day Shukadev Goswami.
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Yeah, so I was just hearing and as mentioning that Chitraketu was disciple of, we saw that, but he was, he was little bit of puffed up. It is said some reason, and it was to be cut to his size or give him the right preaching, and that's why the whole pastime was enacted. Sankarshan, Lord Sankarshan initiate those activities. So that's what is mentioned. So cause and effect. God, he can do, same Krishna.
Correct.
And just initiate. So always there is some reason behind that why these dots are connected and this why it happens.
Correct. So Narad Muni initiated him. The Lord gave darshan, and then Lord kind of initiated him again by giving the philosophy himself.
Okay.
Right. So yeah.
But it's a very rare that we see, connection with a direct, instead of Lord Krishna, but going to Sankarshan. So we see different devotees reaching to different, expansion of Lord.
So remember, this is end of Satyug, beginning of Treta Yuga. Lord Krishna has not appeared. Right? So in the Treta Yuga and in the Satyug, people were not worshipping Krishna. They were worshipping Vishnu, they were worshipping Narayan, they were worshipping Hari, but not Krishna.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then, sorry, go ahead. I thought I heard somebody. Anyway, so if there's nothing else, then I would stop here, and we'll see you next Thursday, and we'll do the life and pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Prabhu.
the
Hare
class,
Krishna.
Krishna,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.